Hi everybody. Today I will explain how to create a pivot table. What are the important hacks of pivot table? Pivot table is a tool to summarize data, to create reports. What if I need to know how many male employees I have in my company? How many females? How many employees that work for more than 7 years? What are the total salaries in each location? This is a summary. I need to summarize the data that I have. In this case, I can use a pivot table. Select your table first. I can simply select it by clicking the first cell, then I press Ctrl Shift right arrow and then Ctrl Shift down arrow. Now I selected all the table, and from Insert, Pivot Table. Table or range is the range of cells of your table. And here, whether you need your pivot table to be separated in a new worksheet or to be added in in an existing worksheet. I need it to be in a new worksheet. Okay. This is a space where you can see your pivot table once you build it. From here, you can decide what to include in your pivot table. Here are all the fields in your table. And you can distribute the fields that you need to display on the pivot table over these four fields or these four spaces. Columns, you add here what you need to see as column headers, while rows contains what you need to see as row headers. The value is the field that you need to apply a function on it. If you need to apply a filter, you can use the filter section. But now let's build a table that show me how many males and females. So I will need the gender. I will put it in the column. So now I can see them as column headers. But I have to apply a function. I need to count how many females and how many males employees. To count, the logical way to count is to use the ID. But once I drag the ID to the value, it automatically applies the sum function. But this is not logic because I couldn't sum the ID. To change the function that's applied for the value section, from this drop-down arrow, I can see the value field setting. And from here, I can choose the function that I need to apply. So I will choose count. The name of the field, count of ID. I can change it, total employees, and then okay. And now, as you can see, you have column labels, females and males, and how many females you have and how many males. At the end, you have grand total. But if I need to expand it more, so I need to know how many females and males in each location. So I need to expand it according to the location. I can add the location, drag it and drop it in the rows. So over the rows header, I can see the locations, and the column headings are the gender. So for example, this location has 13 females and 9 males. In total, this location has 22. As you can see, we have grand total for every row, which is the location, and the grand total for every column, males, females, and males, the grand total of employees as a whole. If I need to apply a filter, for example, I need to see employees by age. I'm going to take age and drop it into filter. Appears up here. If you open it, you can see all the ages that you have. You can select, for example, I need to see employees that are 66 years. I can click it and then okay. Or you can select multiple items and then okay. When you finish, you can select all and okay. If you need to remove anything from the pivot table, just drag it and drop it here. I need now to calculate the salary. I can see here the sum of salaries. I need to see the average salary. From here, value field setting, average. and then OK. But as you can see, I need to show the summary in nicely formatted number with currency. So I can go back here from value field setting, number format. I need to set it as currency or accounting. You can set the display, the decimal places and the currency. And then OK. I need to remove the age from the filter. I will drop it back into the field section. And I want to drop here the work years. I can see the average of salaries for every work years. When you apply a pivot table, two new tabs appear in my ribbon. These are specific for the pivot table. So when I click anywhere outside the pivot table, I couldn't see them anymore. So to see them, I have to click inside the pivot table. It means that everything in these two ribbons or tabs are specific for the pivot table. So if you need to apply anything on pivot table, you can use these two tabs. From design, you can choose the design of your pivot table. For example, we have pivot table style, where you can see different styles. Grand total, this will allow you to turn on or off the grand total. As you can see, I have grand total for rows, grand total for columns, and the grand total of everything. You can choose to turn off all of them. You can add them for rows and columns. For rows only, like here, and no more for columns. Or you can choose to add them for columns only. The pivot table analyze, you can work on your data within the pivot table. On the right-hand side, you can see some toggle buttons. These will allow you to show and hide some parts of the pivot table. For example, the field list. This is the field list. I can click it to hide it, and I can show it again. The field headers are the fields that you can see here. As you can see, column labels. So we can hide or display them. In the rows, we added the work years. But if I need to categorize these work years, if I need to categorize these work years, for example, I need to know what are the average salaries for people who work from 1 to 5 years and from 6 to 10 years and above 10 years. Click inside the field that you need to categorize and choose group field from pivot table analyze. This is the start and end value that you already have in your table, and this is the step. For example, I need to put 5 step by 5, and then OK. From 1 to 5 years, these are the average salaries for females and males, from 6 to 10, and so on. I can change the grouping by group field. I can set by or the step to be 3, for example. Or I can ungroup the field. We can also choose a slicer. You can choose one or more slicer from here. Let me choose a slicer for gender and the location. So I get 2 slicer. Okay. The slicer work like a filter. And if you use more than one slicer, it means that you use more than one filter. I need to see, for example, the data or the summary of male employees in Dallas. These are the average salaries for only males in Dallas. You can click here to choose more than one selection. Dallas and New York. If you need to remove the filter, you can just click here. If you need to remove one of these slicer, you can click the slicer and delete. When you add a slicer, you will find a slicer tab, a new slicer tab, from which you can choose the style of the slicer. The slicer can be linked to many pivot tables if you have more than one in your workbook. So you can simply click on report to connection. And here you can find the list of all the pivot tables that you have. Just check them and then, okay. From pivot table analyze, also you can add a timeline. Timeline, it is possible to add timeline if you have a date and time field in your table. If you don't have date and time field in your table, you will not be able to add timeline. Because I have a higher date, which is date, I can add a time line based on the higher date. Timeline is similar to the slicer. When you add it, you find the timeline tab, and from here you can choose the design. And you can apply report to connection. If you have more than one pivot table, you can check all the pivot tables that you need to connect to the slicer. If you choose anything from the connected timeline, it will apply to all the pivot tables that are linked to this timeline, and the same for the slicer. And it's very important if you are creating a dashboard and you need to use one timeline and the slicer for every pivot table to filter them all at once. So in this case, you have to set the connection, the report connection. This timeline is very nice. So from here, you can choose how you want to display it. May you need to display in years. And from here, I need to see the data for 2018. I can expand for many years. And you can remove the filter from here. Or you can display it at quarters, months, and days. And you can see every year with its quarters. So you can select the quarters that you need to filter the data on them. Let's remove the filter. If you don't need the timeline, you can simply click and delete it. If we go back to the pivot table analyze, from here you can change the name of this pivot table. And this is very important if you are creating many reports. You need to assign a name for everyone, so you will not be confused later when you try to call any of them. Also, we have here options. Layout and format. If you have empty cells, show what? For example, I have empty cells here. So I can show, you can leave them blank, or you can add a number or a symbol to display instead of blank cells. For example, you need to display 0 in the blank cells, or hash, or dash, or something like that. This means display dash in every blank cell. For error values, if you have an error, you can use a number or a symbol to display in error cells. So if you have any error, you can just display 0, you can display dash, you can display anything. This is up to you. And then, okay. As you can see here, every blank cell has the dash that I assigned. If you make a change in the original table, the pivot table will not directly affected by this change, except if you, but you need to refresh the pivot table. From pivot table analyze, you can click on refresh. And this refresh will apply the changes that you made on your original data. If you need to change the data source of this pivot table from a change data source, and you can change the selection. And then, okay, cancel. You can insert a pivot chart for this pivot table. Once you click pivot chart, you can choose the pivot chart type. And then, okay. This pivot chart has filters like the pivot table, so you can choose the filter that you need to use. Label filter, depending on the label, which is here is the row headers. I need to see data for employees who worked for more than 9 years. So I'll choose label filter greater than 9 and then okay. Here the table is filtered and the chart is filtered as well. You can remove the filter from here. Clear filter. You can hide all of these buttons. Right click on the button and hide all field buttons. If you clicked on any of the value fields, right click, you can show values as, for example, percentage of grand total. So it converted, the values are converted into percentage of the grand total. To reset them, we choose no calculations. I need to apply a group here on pivot table, group field, and I will set the step to be 3. Okay. And I want to add the location together with the work year. It means that we can add more than field in the same area. We can apply the same in columns also and values. For example, New York, I have the average salaries for employees worked for 1 to 3 years, 4 to 6, and so on. If I need to organize it in a nicer way, from pivot table design, report layout, and you have options to show your report. I can set it in tabular form. As you can see, the location and here the work years. What if I need to fill in all the blanks of the location? Again, from report layout, I will choose repeat all item labels. So every location will be repeated in its section. The small buttons to collapse or expand. And that's all, guys. Thank you for watching. I will see you next video. If you like the video, please hit like and subscribe if you are new to the channel.